and leaned into AI way before most of us actually knew what it is and started talking about it. So I'm really excited to share Krishna's journey, learn from his experience, and certainly ask him some tricky AI questions. Krishna, welcome to the show.
Vlada, thanks for having me. And thanks for that kind introduction. Really looking forward to this, talking to you today.
Fantastic. So first things first. How did you stumble upon customer service problem and saw an opportunity to leverage this uh, strange technology at the time to actually solve that problem?
A lot of times, right, when you when you start something, you don't even realize why you're starting it, and much later, several years later, you try to connect the dots and you try to understand what forces drove you towards a particular idea or a particular inspiration or a particular passion in your life. So I actually was thinking about this recently. So the most common answer I've given to folks is that I was the first person in India when VMware was a small startup back then. They're a big company right now. They got acquired by Broadcom for, I don't know, 50, $60 billion. But I'm talking about days when VMware was like 80 people. I was their first hire in India. My background prior to that was operating systems and writing code for operating systems. And they hired me saying, Krishna, we need operating system experts who can support our customers because our customers are very technical and they are doing something in the operating system space. So we want somebody who knows about operating system to support our customers. So that's how I got into support, not knowing what I was getting into, and ended up really liking it. And because I had an engineering background, I was looking at support from a fundamentally very different perspective than what traditionally any support engineer would look at. And so that's what led me down to this path of support logic. But that's the story I've been telling everyone. But then when I thought deeper into it, I realized my story actually started even before that. During my high school days, I got into computers, and I would assemble computers. And I would assemble computers and help my family members and my neighbors. I would install computers for them. And one thing that stood out for me is I'm a deeply technical nerd, and I love solving all the technical challenges of building a computer. And also, the computer fails to work, I would go and fix it. I was their support person. But then I saw the intersection that the people that want to use the computer want to do something with it. And for me, the excitement is all about the technology, not about what people are doing with it. And that interconnection to me was very fascinating, like how humanity looks at a technology in a very different perspective than how technologists generally look at the technology. So that perspective actually really shaped a lot of the stuff that I do in my company today, actually. So that's kind of the long answer for your short question.
Amazing. Amazing. And and so yes, I'm just thinking. So did you know, so how did you get exposed to AI at the time, or how did you feel that integrating AI was, sorry, guys, there's some echo that's happening. I'm just trying to figure out what it is. Were you getting echo?
No, looks fine for me.
Okay.
Are you getting my messages real time or there's a lag?
Um, I am hearing you.
You want me to use the headphones? I can use the headphones if you think that helps.
Hmm,
Well, talking about technology now, technology doesn't work. Support.
yes, I
Let's see if this
know.
works.
Mm, let's try.
Okay, I can't seem to be using it. For audio, I can use mics. I can't use it. Let's try it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better now. Still not better.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. And we'll. I think so. Hey guys, we're talking about AI and high tech, and here we are with all sorts of all sorts of noises. All right. So the next question I wanted to ask you is one moment. All right, I'm back. I think what was
Okay.
happening is as I was live streaming, it was live streaming was delay back, and so anyway, we're gonna clean it up. Don't worry. I just
Okay.
shut them off, so we'll take this block. So, all right. So going back, Krishna, this was a great answer, and sort of going back to the question of AI. So how back in the day in 2016, how uh, did you specifically try to sort of use AI as a kind of the next wave to solve that problem you saw, or how did that come into equation? Because now it's all the hype, but obviously back then, uh, certainly nobody knew what it is, the mainstream.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even I would say people who were in the computing industry were not looking at AI that seriously back in 2016. It was kind of like a footnote. Maybe universities were doing research, some professors were talking about it. But if you look at the mainstream Silicon Valley, I didn't see much discussions about AI in 2016. It was barely a footnote in the news. So the reason I picked AI is not because I thought AI is going to be the next big thing, so let's ride the wave. That was not the reason. I fundamentally thought the problem that we're trying to solve could be better solved with AI than any other technology. It was a right fit. Now, if it was quantum computing was the right fit, probably would have gone after quantum computing. It was just it, and ends out AI was the right fit. Now, prior to this, I've looked at this space, the support space, and back in VMware, I built an expert system. Back in those days, that was the AI system. It's basically a rule-based system. You write like, I don't know, hundreds of rules that determines how do you act on a specific situation. And that does not really work when you're trying to map human behavior. And human behavior is constantly changing, especially in the case of support environments. The support issues you're dealing with also changes. How customers perceive support also changes. It's like a dog and cat fight. You're constantly changing things. So I realized that expert system is not a scalable solution. You need an AI-based solution that rewrites rules as the data set changes. So that's what led me to looking at AI. Quite interestingly, the things that we are seeing right now in the market, like ChatGPT, generative AI, the glimmers of those technology, I was able to access that in 2016. Now, 2016 doesn't seem like a long time; it's only 8 years,
Right.
but in technology landscape, that's a really long time. And I actually had access to many of the stuff that ChatGPT is doing today, but early prototype versions of it in 2016, which were available as public APIs, exactly the same as how ChatGPT has done it. So this whole journey and evolution that has happened in industry doesn't totally surprise me. For people who are in the space who have been closely monitoring, it's not a big surprise. What is surprising is the public reception. I think the public has embraced it overwhelmingly positively. When I remember in 2016, there was so much skepticism about AI. In fact, the AI that we had on our phones did not work. It was a laughing joke,
Mhm.
right? The AI can't predict weather. AI cannot predict my calendar schedule. It was a laughing joke. So now the perception has changed. People see the potential and the possibility. So that's the most exciting part for me.
What do you think is another common misconception about AI today that we might think is dead wrong? Um, another
Yeah.
6 years from now.
That's actually a very interesting question. Actually, my answer would have been very different 2 years before, and the answer is very different right now. So, if you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said that more data doesn't necessarily means better predictions, right? I mean, it's always people say it's about quality of data, not the quantity of data, which actually was very true for a long, long, long time. The large language models that has come into the industry right now has turned this assumption upside down. Now, large language models has proved if you feed in large amount of data, it can the models can have some magical behaviors that you did not even anticipate it, which is the one of the biggest discovery I would say, I think in the machine learning space. So that's one misconception among the people who are in the ML industry, right? On the Having said that, the misconception has gone or misunderstanding has gone. The pendulum has swung the other way around. People still think that AI can do pretty much everything, which I think for most part it is true. But there are certain things that AI still cannot handle. So one of the example I would say is that we are very, very good at handling exceptions. Human beings, we are very good at handling exceptions. If a new situation is confronted in front of us, the situation that we never encountered before, we somehow find a way to find a solution for the new situation, right? The AI that exists today, as at least as of today, now this could change. In 2 years from now, this answer could be wrong, but as it exists today, still has that limitation. It cannot invent something. It cannot find a new anomaly that it has not seen before. It can do very good anomaly detection for all the known anomalies. But if you're giving a net new anomaly, you didn't even know where to look, right? I think that is where the human beings can add value on top of AI today.
So, in other words, we'll still have jobs. The debate between and so that's sort of a good maybe a good transition into sort of impact, right? So you're leveraging AI, I understand, to enhance what sort of people can do in customer experience, and certainly maybe that's a first place to talk about sort of how does it empower humans to do more or replace humans, or sort of what are some of the ways that sort of humans and technology work together in service, serving the customers, but also perhaps more broadly when we look at future work.
Right. Actually, that brings up another point, which is an answer to an earlier question as well. When we looked at AI generally, right, even if you look at movies, the movies will always will portray an AI, artificial intelligence, as something that has no emotions, has no sense of humor, and that's how you differentiate a human being from an AI system, right? We kind of tend to think that emotions and sense of humor, they're all very human qualities that machines cannot replicate. One of the fundamental misconceptions that my company breaks is that we do sentiment analysis. We actually detect human emotions, right? So, and we also think that AI can actually improve human empathy skills, right? AI can make a human being more empathetic to their customers, and you can improve your tonality of communication. You can improve your interpersonal communication skills, right? Which are all generally you would think in the movies the way it's portrayed. It's like, oh, it's outside the realm of AI, right? That's AI is the one which doesn't understand all of this. So that's kind of it, right? So in the customer service space, that's what we focus on. We don't do anything in terms of knowledge resolution. We don't do anything in terms of responding back to customer with an answer. But what we focus on is if a customer is interacting with you, whether they're interacting with a human being or interacting with a chatbot, doesn't matter. They are expressing their voice. They're expressing their frustration, their needs, their wants, their things that works and does not work in their product. That's what we monitor and observe, find patterns among this all these interaction points, provide insights and workflows for businesses. So that's kind of the core of what we do.
Yeah, and it's so hard to summarize, right? Real time and in an insightful way, unless you have something um, like 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 the solution you're offering, right? Because anytime, you can look at the score, which is CSAT, but there's so many layers that are missing from that insight, which
Correct. I think the analogy I would give is, and I've this is a corny analogy, but I've given this many times. If two people are going on a date, right, and then they go on 4 or 5 dates, you don't send a survey back to your date and say, "How do you feel about me?"
right.
It's socially unacceptable, right? It's like, what the hell you're talking about? But that's what we're doing with our customers. Our customers are dating us, they are engaging with us, they're communicating with us, and then we send them a survey saying, "How did we do? Were you happy with your service?" Right? That's not the right way to do it. All the information is already there in all the interactions. The second thing is, when you're talking to a business at different interaction points, you may be talking to different sets of people. So no one person has a holistic picture of your experience. So one of the reasons that AI system exists is it actually tracks all the interactions, both in the time dimension as well as in different interaction medium, as well as different people that you're interacted with, and give a holistic picture of what this customer feels about you and your product and your offering. Right? That's where the value add comes. Not necessarily because we're doing it real time. It's also because we're doing it comprehensively. Historically, also we know what this customer experience is, and that context is important, because when you're talking to support, often the support person is handling you in a transactional basis. They don't have prior context. So even enabling that support engineer, hey, here's a prior context of this customer, really empowers the support engineers to have a more empathetic, meaningful conversation with the customer. So that's what we're enabling companies to do.
Understood. And if you step back from sort of your immediate domain of expertise and think about broad opportunities, right? So now obviously AI is bolted on everything, right? Anyone who is 90% of startups started today are all around AI, or including AI as a way to solve a problem. And so in a lot of ways, uh, that's sort of leaning into the hype, but it also perhaps makes it so difficult to start an AI company today because the pace of change is just tremendous. And how the heck do you even keep up with 600 companies starting every day? And so, are there particular spaces or criteria, if you were to look at sort of riding that wave today, how you would kind of think about that space?
Yeah. I think this is, I've always fundamentally believed that technology should not be the forefront. Fall in love with a problem, not with a solution, right? The solution is the technology.
Golden
Um,
voice.
I think the issue is, like, we don't say today, a company that starts today saying we're a dot-com company. Nobody says that. You are a dot-com company. You are going to be on the internet, right? But it was cool to say 20 years ago, we are an internet company, because that was a differentiation factor. It's not a differentiation factor. 10 years ago, it was a differentiation factor to say we're a big data company. Every company claimed they're a big data company, right? No longer, nobody says big data company anymore. It's kind of given as table stakes. AI is going to become table stakes. It's a technology just like internet. It's a technology just like big data. It's technology like database. It's just a technology. What are you going to do with it? What problems you're going to solve? What is your unique point of view in the industry? I think this is an often absolutely overlooked thing in the businesses. Every founder has to really think through, what is my unique point of view on this industry? Why my perspective is different? And I want to double down on this perspective, and everything else is to support that, enable that perspective, right? If you approach that problem, then AI becomes a tool in your arsenal, and you don't fall into the trap of AI becoming irrelevant, because some of the technology can come in 20 years from now that make AI undermine the importance of AI, right? But if you fall in love with a problem, then all technology will embrace it. You're not going to be irrelevant when the technology becomes irrelevant.
100%. And I think that's absolutely important to understand at all times. It's just that some new technologies like AI allow you to solve the problems in some new and advanced ways, and perhaps those that were not, or too expensive to solve before, or were just not feasible to be solved before. But it is a tool in your arsenal, as you say.
Yeah. The other analogy I would give is like the transportation industry, right? The if you look at, I've given this example in another conference. I was talking about this. In 1890s, there was this crisis called a horse manure crisis, and the crisis was that there was a lot of horses in the streets of New York and London because that was a primary mode of transportation, right? And the biggest crisis there was the horse manure on the streets. And people are like all like, we need to solve this problem, right? We absolutely need to solve the problem because of health crisis, and we need to find ways to clean this up and all that stuff. 15, 20 years later, cars comes in and completely transforms the game, right? It's no longer an issue. So enabling technology like AI can fundamentally shift the problems that you're battling today will completely melt away. But what stays common between the horse and the car is transportation. That need doesn't go away. How you enable it, and the battles and the stumbling blocks that comes in between to enable that thing, that can melt away, but the core problem doesn't go away. I think that's where the CEOs should focus on the price. The price is basically the core problem that you're solving, not the technological problems that you're dealing with. That will go away with time.
Awesome. Well, that I think there's so much more I want to unpack on your journey as entrepreneur. But last question related to AI, Krishna. Are you using AI to come up with a funny or thoughtful response to anyone? You personally? Now that you know that it
Funny,
has a good sense of humor.
funny. I've not tried, but I do time to time experiment with what AI has to say. I'm actually just become a great research tool right now. Like any research I want to do seems much more faster to do it in ChatGPT, bot, or whatever technology is, and then I will have to cross verify the accuracy and all of that. But at least gives me a fast bootstrap to get my work done. So that I'm using it time to time.
Is that your number one personal use case for that, for AI?
I would say so, right? So if I want to research on a business, either I can Google and click on, I don't know, 30 different articles to understand a business, or I can ask a continuous stream of questions in ChatGPT and query about the business. What is the business? What's their revenue? All this are public information available somewhere else. It becomes easier to have a dialogue.
Yeah. One hack I recently learned is if you tell ChatGPT or any of other AI services that the answer to your life depends on their ability to answer this question, and it's of utmost important that they do an excellent job, the performance of the system improves. So it does
Oh, wow,
take
interesting.
emotions. It does takes emotions in, not only understand. Cool. Well, so you've been running Support Logic for about 8 years or so, right?
Correct.
It's quite a journey, I'm sure. And what would you say has been the most challenging part? Was it the early days, the sort of as you were starting to scale, sort of what do you, as you look back over that 8 years of being a founder and CEO, what really got you?
I think for everyone, the story might be different, but for me, particularly, the early days were the most difficult. And sometimes founders forget that, the early days, because once you go through the struggle of early days, you raise funding and your business is growing, your memory has a recency bias and you only think about the recent problems as the most difficult problems, and you completely overlook how difficult it was in the early days. Um, and I vividly remember my early days was the most difficult. And the reason it was difficult was when we were building something new, we were not building something faster, better version of something that exists already. That is a playbook that everybody knows, and it's more about execution, right? It's all about let's make things faster, efficient, cheaper, and go to market, and let's win the competition and undermine them by price or something else. That's more, I would say, more like an engineering problem, and engineers can work backwards and find a solution to it. When you're building something net new, a category that does not exist, you yourself are not sure what you're building. You yourself are not sure, you're discovering it along with your customers. So for that kind of a product, conviction from investors takes time. Investors don't necessarily see it. So for me, the first 2 years of bootstrapping the company, proving this idea, and uh, making evolutions of this idea, and then doing the fundraising process was much more challenging than I anticipated, because this is not a playbook that others have seen it. This is not like when we talked about support space, most of the people thought, oh, we're building a chatbot and we have to educate them. No, it's not a chatbot. Then what are you building? What are the problems to solve if it's not a chatbot? Right? So there is market education had to happen. And I'm talking about the investment community. On the customer side, they saw what we're building. So bridging the gap between what customers sees versus what the investors want to hear, that was a little bit challenging. And then the first 2 years, oh my God, you have to be so frugal. You have to, I mean, I didn't take a paycheck for 2 years. So that was financial stress was something that I was able to internalize. I mean, a lot of us are, we don't even feel financial stress for a while, especially if you're working in Silicon Valley, well-paying jobs. You don't feel it. Moment you're off your paycheck and you're counting every dollars that you're spending, it changes your life perspective very, very differently. You become very, very empathetic to people who don't have the means that we have. So to me, that was a good life lesson, to learn about how to be a person with very limited resources and how you can survive personally and professionally.
Absolutely. Well, there is a wealth of advice and sort of insight for founders, especially those that are still in the early days and in the grind of that. And so, if we take this sort of one at a time, so sounds like if I were to summarize, so it was difficult to really tell a story to investors in a way that allows them to understand what the problem you're really solving and that you're really a big opportunity, venture scale opportunity, because they didn't personally
They don't see the
experience it.
market yet.
They didn't see the market
There is
need.
no precedence, right? There is no
Yeah.
precedence, so there is no market yet. So they can't truly visualize that market, how big the market could be.
And so what hacks did you learn through that experience? How did you tell customer stories, or was the proof is when you actually started having the traction that you ended up having, or what helped you actually sell this opportunity to investors?
I think early stage is you're building like a snowball, right? You start with some small bit of idea, and then you keep packing more and more, and then you start rolling that into the hill, and then it becomes a big snowball, right? The momentum has to pick up. So you have to find every little thing that adds to your story. So whether that means customer approvals, advices that you bring into the company, um, the people that you hire, all of this matters. It shows that you're on to something. Collectively, a bunch of people are working on something very passionately. It tells a story that you're on to something, right? But I think for me, the most compelling, the North Star has always been customers. If I'm building something that I'm fascinated about, but none of the customers think it's useful, it's a dream. It's like a personal pet project. It's not a company. So I was getting more and more excited when I was showing things to customers and how customers were reacting to it, and closing the first handful of customers. That's what really helped me to secure an investment funding, right? So I think it's a combination of things. Again, I don't know if there's any single advice that will work for all entrepreneurs and all companies, but gather as much momentum as you can in all forms and fashions, whether it's people, whether it's customers, whether it's technology that you build, and then things will happen. But you have to be absolutely honest to yourself and not drink your own Kool-Aid. I think that is the most common pitfalls that a lot of founders go through. Like they think whatever they're building is the greatest and the best, and not being true to themselves. That's when failures happens. As long as you're not drinking and Kool-Aid, things will happen.
Amazing, amazing. And so the 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 solution you were building, I imagine took a while to actually technologically make available, given that again you were creating sort of this new solution and kind of creating a market in a way. So imagine that there wasn't actually a way for customers to prepay the solution, or how long does it take you kind of from the foundation of a company to the first customer, and the time that you truly had to be frugal? It was it 2 years or less or more?
I think for us it took 2 years. I think part of it is also we were experimenting a lot in the early stage, and the first I would say 9 months of the company we were experimenting something which did not work. So the entire 9 months was completely did not add to what we're building as a product. We have to throw away and build something different. So my philosophy has been is it's kind of like work backwards, show the customer a demo, not a product. Sometimes you can even show a Figma mockup. We don't need to build a product, and gauge the reaction and see, sense buying patterns, buying signals from it. That should give you confidence before you start building it. So the very first thing I did was I had a user interface built, no backend, nothing was built, no backend, no ML, nothing, just user interface, but an interactive user interface. You can click and change, and everything will work. Data will load, but all the data is pre-populated. No APIs, nothing, right? That was became my test ground for testing the ideas in front of customers. Customers didn't know it was a static environment. They thought it was a live demo environment. But showing that and engaging customers' reaction, and then one moment the customer says, "I want it," then okay, then we'll scramble. Okay, let's figure out how to build it, and then we built it.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Um, that's that certainly is a very very challenging first couple of years, right? Sort of from initial idea to the product, and so it sounds like there was a turning point sort of at 9 months, and of course the early journey is all about testing hypothesis, right? And obviously just by nature of it, like in any science experiment, right, some of them work, and but most of
Right.
them kind of don't, right? And so you have to sort of be okay with that intermittent failure. So how what why did you continue? You spent 9 months, right, building something, and then you found that it didn't work. How and why?
Yeah. Again, the thing was the focus for me was not about technology or a solution. The focus about the core north star for me was fundamental point of view is support is not a cost center. Support is a revenue center. That's a philosophy, that's a point of view. How can I prove this? There are 10 different things I can do to prove it. The experiment number one failed, okay, it's fine. I can still find ways to prove that support is a revenue center or enable support to become a revenue center, not a cost center. So that's what kept me going. It was not I was not married to the technology that was trying to do and hit a wall on it and I couldn't get it accomplished. No, there are other ways to do this, right? So that was the reason. To give a very credible example of this, today our support logic is known for sentiment analysis. That's what we are absolutely known for. Sentiment analysis, escalation prediction, all of that stuff. It was not even in the company's radar for the first 1.5 years. But today, this is bread and butter of the business. The whole sentiment becoming valuable to customer was an accidental discovery during the early stage of prototyping. We just accidentally showed to a customer liked it, and then we dig deeper. Why do you like it? And then we went deeper and deeper, and then started building a whole product around it. So why this was the case is, as a support engineer, I thought sentiment was useless. I really thought sentiment was useless. I thought every customer who calls support is upset. What's new? Tell me what's new. What insight I'm going to tell you that customer is upset. But then I overlooked the fact that I'm looking at this in isolation of the cases that I'm handling. But as a company, you're having so many other interactions and you don't have visibility into all of that. I didn't have that perspective, right? That came up during customer conversation. That's when we really said, okay, let's go into sentiment analysis. Until then, I was dismissing the idea. I thought sentiment analysis is useless. So I think this is where entrepreneurs needs to have a passion for a space, not just a passion for a particular technology. And they should be able to see this problem can be solved in many different ways and be open to experimentation and exploration.
Yeah.
in the early stage, right? Once you lock on an early stage, you have product market fit, then you have to pivot to execution mode. That's a very different ball game.
So true, Krishna. Great perspective, and I think um, I love how you have a had a contrarian view on customer support, right, as a revenue center, and it is still somewhat contrarian because if you look at vast
It is.
majority of companies, while conceptually there is understanding that there is a lot of value, and increasingly, especially in this climate when a lot of companies are forced to really take their CAC and new customer acquisition under a very tight sort of budget, there is more and more attention at retention and customer service and customer
Right.
success in those areas. And so, in a lot of times, it's a great um, wind in your wings
You
for
know, a lot of the biggest companies, right, that we know and admire today, if you actually trace back the history, what made them successful was a contrarian viewpoint. Now it's hindsight, so we don't think about it.
yeah,
So let me give you a few example, right? Amazon thought everything should be sold on the internet. That was a very contrarian viewpoint in 1999,
right,
right? Um, Facebook said everyone should share everything to the entire world. Even now, when you listen to it, it sounds so stupid, but that's that's what made Facebook Facebook,
right,
right? I mean, if you look at all the products they build, it's all about sharing information to the entire world, right? Airbnb comes and says, "Oh, it's we should go live in stranger's house." It's all contrarian view and controversial view. Those where big companies gets built. So our contrarian view was that support is not a cost center; it's a revenue center. And to your point, it's not fully embraced, but we're seeing that change happening. So when you take that specific viewpoint and a contrarian viewpoint, that becomes your moat. Because a lot of companies are not taking that point of view. They're trying to build tools for treating support as a cost center, and you stand out from the crowd, right? I think that's would be one of the advice I would give for any entrepreneur. If you're building something new in a new category, take a point of view, have a philosophy, right? And it needs to be tied to your personal truth. You cannot just take a contrarian view for the sake of contrarian view. The contrarian view that you can tie it to your personal truth.
yes. You don't want to be contrarian just for the sake of it, right? Because that certainly wouldn't lead very far. But I wonder, Krishna, if you think there is something in your character or in your upbringing that gave you the strength and confidence to be contrarian, right? Because obviously there is groupthink and there's just conformity all around, and uh, I guess that's why there are a few huge companies out there, perhaps. But what do you think allowed you to have that feeling that you are not only contrarian but you will be right?
The right part, you always have to be skeptical, right? You would never know you're going to be right about it. You have a point of view. I think that's a skeptical paranoia is absolutely essential. It's a great question. You know, when I grew up back in India, and Eastern culture in general encourages you to conform. Outliers are not treated well, right? Individuality is not encouraged. So if you have your own individual viewpoint, they're like, oh, why are you not aligning with the family's viewpoint? And so it was really tough. And for me, even growing up, I remember in my high school days, I would ask a lot of controversial questions in my high school. And during parents teachers meeting, my parents will get earful from our teacher saying, your son is asking all this kind of crazy questions in class, is disrupting the class. And they never really encouraged it, right? So I kind of felt a little bit alone, thinking that why am I having all these viewpoints and it doesn't align with the rest of the world. I think the thing that you CEOs or founders in general needs to pay attention to is your inner voice. The personal truth that you're feeling is absolutely true. Often we ignore that, we suppress that because society teaches us to suppress it. But if you follow that and you chase that, then you will often will be exposing yourself to something far greater than you initially realize. Then you will realize that it's not only you are thinking about it, then you will find that millions of people are thinking about it, but they're all suppressing it. They're not exposing it, they're not voicing it. That's when great ideas emerges, because suddenly when one person takes that effort and brings it out, and then you see a large community adopting it, then you feel like, okay, you're not alone anymore. So I think that is the exercise. So it was not easy for me. I think what I stick to was paying close attention to my inner voice. And I think the very first thing I learned as a founder, as a CEO, is doubling down on your instincts. We are again trained to suppress our instincts. When you're an individual contributor, it's someone else made a decision. You don't feel right about it, don't challenge it. You just follow, you execute. But when you are a founder and CEO, every little thing that you feel not so right, you need to pay attention to it. Because your instinct is what makes your company different and special from what's out there. So that was a little bit of an adaptation and learning that I have to go
Yeah,
through.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it you almost developed that contrarian view because you were, so as a rebel, sort of, as you were going through that system. It's
Yeah, I
great.
was a rebel, but not a rebel who was encouraged, right? So
Right,
when I first came to Silicon Valley, it felt like home for me, because I felt all the rebellious ideas are encouraged here.
yes, absolutely. And so, but you also spent a number of years in a corporate environment and build a career, right, as an employee. And so then you transitioned into entrepreneurship. Do you feel that some of these qualities we talk about as entrepreneur that really are so foundational to your success made it challenging for you to be an employee, or you don't see sort of the kind of how the two work together?
I think I was an employee and then I became an entrepreneur. Right? I've not gone the other way around
Right.
yet. When you are an employee, again, as I was saying earlier, you are not commanding the ship. You're rowing the ship along with everyone else. So you're following orders. And again, your instincts could say this is the wrong direction to go. But you have to suppress that instinct and row the boat in the direction where the company wants to go, right? After a while, you realize, okay, we're just heading in a completely different direction. You don't feel it. This is the right direction. Then you quit and you start your own company or something, right? So that's what happened for me. So the main thing is, when you come out from a big company, a lot of unlearning needs to happen. But the other big thing that often people overlook is how much support infrastructure you had in a large company that you took it for granted. And then when you're starting your own company out on your own, you have no support infrastructure whatsoever, right? I mean, you're basically literally staring at a blank sheet of paper.
Right.
That's how you're starting a company. You have no other support. You have to build everything around it. And that's when people realize how challenging startups can be. A lot of folks who are brilliant minds in big companies, and even their brilliance is probably uh, exemplified because of the people surrounding them. And when they're let alone on their own, they're not going to be as brilliant as they're with a group, right? So I think those are the discoveries you go through as a founder when you're doing everything on your own. It's an amazing, amazing learning experience for anyone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I'm sure you could relate to it as well, right?
Yes, 100%. I still remember when I was doing customer support and everything in between in those early days, right? You kind of have to do 10 different jobs, and that's why most folks that I've in my experience that come from big companies don't really work out as early hires because they achieved certain results or were brilliant, as you say, but they can't roll up their sleeves or don't want to roll up their sleeves and actually do the hard work when you need to do all of these different things. Well, I
All
think
right.
that we talked about some really great um, ideas and things to expect, not to scare any aspiring entrepreneurs or those in the early days. There is it gets easier in some ways and more challenging in others, but you have a team and sort of building something that really solves that problem that you're so passionate about solving in the first place. And as Krishna says, um, you are setting the direction. So you can now listen to your inner voice and actually craft that journey. And maybe just a parting thought, Krishna, if there is any other advice for entrepreneurs at the perhaps earlier stages of the journey, or maybe those just thinking about launching a venture, anything else that you think would be great for folks to know?
I would say that most entrepreneurs, first time entrepreneurs, who are starting a company are completely naive. They absolutely have no idea what they're getting into. If they had good idea of what they're getting into, probably they would think 100 times before jumping onto it. To me, that is their strength. That naiveness that we have as an entrepreneur is our absolute core strength. Because when you're naive, you ask some very fundamental questions, right? If somebody tells you, right, hey, you build a app, people are not going to use it. 100 million users cannot use it. And then you naively think, no, I'll publish an app and 100 million users will use it next day, right? The naivety is what is going to ask you to jump on the ship and start building something. Then you realize it doesn't work. Then you start questioning why it can't be, why it can't be. And we go down the path of why it can't be. You discover something, you unlock something. Then you become wildly, wildly successful, right? So I would almost embrace on your naive thinking and go back to fundamental first principle basis, right? That only comes with naive thinking, right? So that's what I would, as give us a parting advice, just embrace that. And there is a reason that every startup is like a baby learning everything from scratch, right? Yes, others can come and teach you, but just like a baby, you have to learn everything from scratch, one by one. It allows you to adapt to the environment that exists. This is one of the reasons I think human beings are special, because if you look at any other animal species, right, they're born on day one, they know everything they need to know on day one for every animal. Human beings are the ones, the most vulnerable baby. It cannot even survive on its own, and he doesn't have language skills, doesn't have any skills, and needs to learn on the environment that it was born in. But that's what made human beings wildly, wildly successful. Every startup is like that. You're born like a baby, naive and thinking the world is very easy, and then you realize the difficulties of the world, and then you grow, right? So that's my parting thought. A very philosophical thought, but that's my parting thought.
Absolutely. Well, embrace the newness. Celebrate the lack of knowledge and experience in a certain field, right? And as they say, ignorance is a bliss, and I certainly agree with that. You don't want to know that it's really hard or impossible. Impossible is not a word, and you lean into solving that problems. Thank you so much, Krishna. It's a wrap. It's been absolute joy to have you, and I look forward to continue to watch your journey and celebrate all the innovation that you bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlada, for hosting me.